Hello, my name is Connor. I'm going to be going over the Optimizing Mental Health project that I've been working on for my research proposal, kind of diving into what I've learned, the process I'm going through, and kind of where the gaps lie within not only the research that I looked at, but also in my own research. So the reason why I chose mental health as the research topic for public safety that I want to dive into is the criticality of how important it is to understand mental health and the resources that are provided. Officers often have to deal with stressful situations, and it always has felt like there has been a stigma around trying to fix those issues. So this is just kind of understanding where are the barriers, what resources are available to them, and is there a way to make a standardized kind of baseline so that any department can make this a possibility to provide to their officers. Officers often face high-stress situations which expose them to life and death outcomes. Often they have to make split-second decisions, and right or wrong, they can't go back. These often lead to higher rates of depression, suicidality, PTSD than the general population. And kind of understanding why they don't reach out to get these resources is a critical part of this, especially since it's been known before that there is stigma around trying to seek mental health, or the officers are in fear that they're not going to be able to promote or move up within the department if they address this issue. So the problem I wanted to identify and understand within this research was what are the barriers that officers are having at their departments with getting mental resources. How do we remove those barriers, and is there a way to standardize what works between the range of different departments and their programs to make a baseline that could be used as a standard for any department that wants to set up their program for mental health resources so that they know what works and they're already providing their officers with a good service without having to try to do all the growing pains of finding out what works and what doesn't. While looking into my literature review, I found different studies that went over different programs, their effectiveness, what are the barriers, trying to understand what has been done already so I'm not reworking on it. I mean, even though my research still wants to figure out what barriers people have, trying to figure out tailoring it to a more what works, what doesn't format. But understanding that leadership engagement was a crucial part discovered by previous research, figuring out that peer support groups can actually help reduce stigma because officers are speaking with somebody that feel or has similar experiences. Things like that kind of help to improve what I was working on and allow me to kind of fill in the gaps of what's already there, trying to figure out, okay, well, if this works here, why does it work? Do these other places have this? How do we make it standard so that I can get an understanding? While researching for the literature review, I found stuff like the Blue Courage, which was able to help reduce some of the stigma, how officers often don't know that they have access to resources from their department, or they're kind of afraid to access those resources due to kind of an unspoken feeling that if they say, hey, I have a mental health concern that I want to speak about, that I need help with, that I need to get kind of treated, they might lose out on promotions. They might be outcasted for trying to reach out about that. So that's a fear that I found. I also found that a lot of it was awareness. They weren't aware that they actually had resources, and had they had them, or had they known that the resources were available, they would have actually gone and used them. Also, within that research with the literature review, I found that peer support groups were tremendously great. It allowed officers to feel comfortable speaking about their experiences, and since they're speaking with somebody who has similar and shared experiences, they felt more comfortable not just opening up, but approaching them. Because a lot of it comes down to officers don't feel like they had anybody to approach. They didn't want to talk to a specialist because they're like, oh, they're either going to just diagnose me with something or they're just going to analytically go through it, but they're not going to understand the feeling. Whenever it came to the peer supports, whether they were talking to their supervisor, whether they were talking to a fellow officer, whether it was a peer support program that brought somebody in who was former law enforcement, these kinds of situations allowed them to feel safer and able to speak more freely with somebody who understood them and could empathize with them. So for the methodology, I wanted to focus on police officers from the state, county, and city level, going from the urban, suburban to rural. I wanted to get a holistic understanding of kind of what works, what doesn't, what are barriers, what do people feel comfortable with. This was going to be sent out by a survey of 15 questions that was both qualitative and quantitative. I wanted to get a numbers information, or a numbers count on kind of what people were at, but I also wanted to get their opinions and understanding of what they needed or what they wanted to share. With that, we wanted to make sure that we got a big enough sample, so we were going to send the survey out to about 600 different officers, sending it through their email. And then from there, they click a link, which takes them to an anonymous survey. The only thing that we would be wanting to look for is, hey, what department you are working at, just so that we understand kind of the area of who, or the kind of area that they work at. Is it rural? Is it county? Is it city? Kind of that information for our study, so that it's as confidential and anonymous as possible, while still providing us with relevant information. The results of the survey that I predict I'll find would be that peer support groups would be among the highest rated for kind of what officers feel works best for them and what they would feel comfortable approaching, due to that familiarity and similarity between shared experiences. I feel that more officers would be open to the idea of using mental health services if their leadership is engaged in it, promoting it, and saying, hey, this is what we think is important, and we want you to feel that that's important. From there, I think that if not only leadership buy-in was there, and that there was that person with shared experiences, stigma would reduce around how officers feel about receiving mental health support for their concerns or even for mental health issues that they're facing. So to reflect on all of the research that I've done, what I've studied throughout these past 8 weeks, I have found that this does fit not just a community level need, but a societal need for officers to be able to receive mental health resources, be able to reduce some of these concerns. There's been a lot of bad stigma around being a police officer and kind of treatment towards the police officers, which doesn't help with any added mental health issues that they are already facing. A lot of the times whenever these situations escalate to a use of force that's kind of unnecessary, that can stem from an officer that has some underlying mental health issue to where they're not realizing that they're taking it as far as they need to, or they're taking it farther than they need to, I should say. With that, however, with the research, there are gaps in the long-term studies of what are the effectiveness of making a standardized process. Does this work? Is there ways to improve it? Kind of understanding, since when it was founded, has there been a need to change it over the years? So there's going to need to be a longer study on this that my research won't be able to provide.